Welcome to this video podcast in our Do Yourself Justice series, where we tell you your legal rights in everyday situations. It's brought to you by award-winning legal firm Slee Blackwell Solicitors. Hello, I'm Danny Lawrence, and I'm your legal everyman, which is to say someone who knows not that much about the law. But thankfully, as usual, I am joined by someone who knows far better than me, and this time it is Chartered Legal Executive from Slee Blackwell Solicitors, Carly Sylvester.
Hi, Danny.
Well, this episode is called How Not to Let Your Holiday Be Ruined. And of course, most of us have been on holiday. Most of us have come back from it without it being ruined. But I know this is your day-to-day business, Carly. You're talking to people whose holidays have been ruined. Tell us about an experience that sticks out in your mind of someone who had a holiday disaster.
Yeah, so I previously acted for a gentleman who booked an all-inclusive package holiday for him and his partner. And on arrival at the hotel, he informed staff and the chef that he was actually suffering with a condition known as celiac disease. And he was eating at the all-inclusive buffet regularly and checked with the chef numerous times. But he soon began to develop symptoms of a rash, fatigue, weight loss, and sickness. And he took photographs throughout the course of his holiday and actually noticed that the same dishes were put out, but the actual labeling of what was contained within each dish differed on different days. So we got medical evidence which confirmed that the illness was attributable to him consuming gluten whilst on holiday, after establishing that, the labeling system was incorrect. And as a result, he suffered a worsening of his condition. That allowed us to obtain compensation not only for the ruined holiday, but for his injuries as well.
There was gluten in the food, so that's obviously a huge problem for many people. And in Britain, the awareness of that is great. In some other countries, not so much. We'll be talking later about the differences in standards between this country and others. But let's talk about personal injury, which I know Slee Blackwell also has a lot of dealings with. Well, let's talk about what rights you have for compensation when you're injured abroad. And I have two very similar stories, and one of them concerns a person who we'll call Danny from Bath, because it was me. I was travelling alone, and I suppose that's going to be relevant, in Hungary. And as I was walking along the street in Budapest, a storm started to brew up, and I was walking past a construction site where they were renovating an old building. One of the fences around the construction site had come loose from its moorings, and the contractor that was doing the building had also secured an advertising hoarding to that fence. And the wind picked it up and sent it hurtling down the road, knocked me to the ground. I was injured slightly, it twisted my ankle, but nothing lasting. The compensation that I might have wanted to claim for was that I lost my glasses in the event. And when I contacted the police at the airport before flying out, they said, well, this was an accident, it's not a police matter, I'm sorry. I did feel that had that happened here in the UK, for example, I might have been able to accuse somebody for negligence, whoever had put that fence there and not secured it properly. So there's one story which we might refer to.
Well, the issue is there are some regulations that we are able to assist under, which entitles you to hold the tour operator liable for the injuries. But unfortunately, this wasn't booked as a package tour holiday. There was no package tour operator that could be held responsible because it occurred in another country. We don't have jurisdiction there. So if you wanted to bring a claim, you would need to do so in the country where the accident occurred.
In contrast, my aunt was just telling me the other day that she went on a cruise in the Caribbean. She went on a shore excursion organised through the cruise ship, and during the course of the shore excursion, the vehicle that they were travelling in was involved in a collision, and people suffered injuries from that.
In relation to the second incident, then your aunt may have a claim. We need to make sure that we are within the 3-year time limit for that.
So it's a package holiday, everything's booked through the cruise, and there's much clearer liability perhaps compared to my episode. And what about evidence for injuries then? We just mentioned the scenario where somebody was taking photographs, so it was all captured on camera. In those two situations where I was walking alone, so there was no evidence of that. My aunt's group, perhaps somebody on the bus may have been filming, maybe not. But what should we do straight away if we're injured and we think, I'm going to have to tell somebody about this? What's the first thing you should do?
Yeah, so the evidence is key. So it can really make or break a case like this. So I would always report the incident as soon as possible, whether that be to hotel staff or a tour operator or a holiday representative, and make sure that that is recorded in writing. And then take any photographs of the injuries, the accident location, or anything that might be relevant. For example, if there was no wet floor signs on a wet floor, you would want evidence of that. Obviously, you should seek medical attention for any injuries, and again, keep a record of that. Any expenses that are incurred as a result of those injuries, if you have to pay for medication or changing hotel or whatever it might be, the evidence to support any financial loss is crucial. So yeah, I would always make sure that there is a record, and any photographs that you can take to support that would be essential to proving negligence.
And so one thing that occurs to me is there might be a difference between a case where I could just claim back on the travel insurance and a more serious episode where I would have to get legal help from a firm like Slee Blackwell. So what sort of difference are we talking about? When should I go to the travel insurance?
So it's always, recommended that insurance is taken out, because actually, that can save you the legal process and can include actually expenses of the holiday as well as injuries. And if it does cover legal expenses insurance as part of the policy, then actually you could save on solicitors' fees as well. So yeah, travel insurance should always be the first port of call. And if for whatever reason they can't assist, then you could seek legal representation yourself.
Okay. Here's another situation which we've been told about. Leanne had a disastrous trip to Turkey to get her teeth done cheaply. That's quite a common thing, people going abroad for medical expenses, medical procedures. Hair transplants is another popular one. She discovered later that the dental procedure had not been properly done, and she had to pay for it to be redone privately in the UK. Now, also during that trip on the flight home, she had hot coffee spilled on her lap by one of the staff on the plane. And while she was on the holiday, a friend had actually sent her a message saying, just claim that you've had food poisoning. They'll believe you and you'll get some money. You can have a free trip. She took a holiday in the UK, but that went wrong too because the hotel that she stayed in had bed bugs. She was bitten multiple times and she even had to throw away clothes and luggage. All sorts of things that we could explore in this scenario. Let's start with those medical procedures where you're going abroad for something which you've chosen not to have done in the UK. What are your rights for that sort of trip?
I mean, you're entitled to take treatment wherever you want. Cosmetic tourism as a whole often leads to issues, especially complications. Although they might be cheaper, the risks are obviously significantly higher because there's little or no regulations compared to UK standards. There's poor or non-existent aftercare. There's sometimes language barriers between the person performing the treatment and the person receiving the treatment. And if things go wrong, your right to bring action is limited to the country in which you have the treatment. I've personally seen cases where clients have spent thousands of pounds after having a botched treatment in Turkey, for example, and then are coming back and having severe complications where many UK clinicians are actually reluctant to fix the work because the risks are so high.
And what about that second thing from Leanne's story where she was actually injured on a plane? The thing that strikes me here is you've said that it depends which jurisdiction you're in, and if you're in a different country, the UK jurisdiction clearly has no sway. Who is liable when you're not in any country at all? You're up in a plane.
Yes. Yeah, so actually there is legislation that applies on this particular example where Leanne is on an aircraft. The Montreal Convention actually applies and allows Leanne to bring a claim in the UK despite it not taking place in any country. Like you said, she's in the air. So the Montreal Convention is strict liability. So in comparison to, say, UK law, where you need to prove negligence, this case, all you need to do is prove that it happened. So again, evidence of it being reported, in this circumstance where she's burnt, you would like to think that the air hostess has noticed that, and again, making sure that there's evidence reported of her injuries as well. So yeah, that actually sounds like a really good claim.
I have almost seen such a thing. Thankfully, it wasn't an injury, but a flight stewardess tipped water over a passenger and she had to go and basically take all of her clothes off and sit there in just a coat and a pair of shorts. And who would be liable if the accident actually happened on the ground? For example, if the plane's taxiing, someone hasn't got their seatbelt on and is somehow injured, does the Montreal Convention cover that, or is that back to the local jurisdiction of the country where the plane's sitting?
No, so the Montreal Convention actually includes everything from disembarking and embarking the aircraft. So as long as you are on the aircraft, whether you are in the air or on the ground, you are still covered under the Montreal Convention.
Well, that's really reassuring for claims that are genuine. But there was something else in Leanne's story which was not genuine.
Yes.
It was a suggestion that you could make something up. And that seems to me that it's going to be... I'm actually surprised that people get away with it, but presumably the more people get away with it, the less likely real claims are to succeed for genuine cases. So this false claim of food poisoning, what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, you can bring a claim for food poisoning. It is very possible, but it is much harder than it used to be. I think in recent years, with these kind of rise in fake or potentially exaggerated claims, insurers have got extremely strict. And, you would now need strong medical evidence confirming that this illness has arisen from the food that they've eaten, whether that be at the hotel or part of the package holiday. And many firms are actually now reluctant on taking on these kind of cases because of the work involved, the high risk of the fraud allegations, and they are now subjected to fixed fees. So, I think people are limited in what they can do, but there are still firms that do assist. The way that you would need to succeed in these kinds of cases is really strong evidence, and I can't stress that enough.
How about that episode of Bed Bugs, which was actually in a UK hotel? That might be relevant in a moment. What rights do you have to claim for damages if that happens to you?
Yeah. I think most people have a misconception that bed bugs were only a problem abroad, but I have numerous inquiries a week relating to bed bugs in the UK. And if we can establish that a hotel or Airbnb or other accommodation provider has failed in their duty of care to keep the premises safe or hygienic, then a person is entitled to bring a claim for compensation for the bites or an allergic reaction, distress, anxiety, sleep, the cost of replacing items of clothing, maybe, or even the cost of moving to a new hotel, then that is a claim for compensation that they are entitled to bring. Again, I can't stress enough the importance of strong evidence, photographs of the bed bugs themselves, photographs of any injuries, any complaints. Again, I would suggest that is made in writing. From dealing with these kind of claims, every time I go to a hotel now, even just checking that the sheets are clean from bed bugs, it really does kind of haunt me, seeing photographs all the time.
I'd like to talk a bit more about the difference between UK standards and foreign standards, actually,
Yeah.
because we live in a very health and safety conscious country, and I've been in foreign countries where, for example, you're walking up the stairs in a hotel and suddenly become aware that there's a 60-foot drop to your left, which would easily be fell down. You would probably not expect to see that in the UK, but other countries don't have the same safety standards as we do. So what happens if you are injured in a situation which you think would be a situation where someone will be liable in the UK, but in the country you're in, it just isn't a thing that's covered by law?
Yeah, I mean, again, the issue is if it's not booked as a package tour, then you are limited to the law and regulations of that country where the accident occurred. So I think you are in a difficult position, and those kind of claims can be extremely difficult.
And what about the behaviour of people, staff, for example, in hotels? Because again, the standards of public behaviour in one country are very different to those of another. So do you have any protection if you feel that you've been harassed or worse by staff?
Yeah, so you can bring a claim. Again, if it's part of a package holiday, the UK tour operator can be held vicariously liable, meaning they are legally responsible for the actions of the staff at the hotel, for example, if we can establish that it's closely connected to their employment. So these cases can obviously be quite daunting for people, and many victims don't know what their rights are, and legal action is possible. But like I said, in those limited circumstances where it's booked as part of a package holiday. For example, I'm currently representing a lady who had booked a massage as part of her all-inclusive package holiday. And unfortunately, during the massage, the masseuse inappropriately touched her. So we are arguing that the tour operator should be held vicariously liable for the actions of the masseuse because it was performed during the course of his employment.
One thing that is clear in many of your answers is that there is a huge difference between package holidays and independent travel. I've done an awful lot of
Yeah.
independent travel, so I certainly would like to leave people with the idea that it is possible to do it and it's not an unsafe thing to do. So what protections could we explore for independent travel? One thing that occurs to me is financial protection, actually, because I believe that if you book with credit cards, it gives you a lot of protection compared with other forms of payment. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, that is correct. So if you can, I would always recommend people pay for the holiday or at least part of it using a credit card, because under the Consumer Credit Act, your credit card provider can be held jointly liable with the retailer for goods or services over £100. So that means if the travel operator, for example, goes bust or the trip isn't delivered as promised, then you have an extra route to claim compensation. But that obviously doesn't apply, unfortunately, to debit card purchases.
And another thing we've mentioned is the importance of travel insurance, which is in principle there as your first point of protection. Where can people go to find more advice if they have any of the experiences that we have talked about? We've already said that it's important to have travel insurance because that's often going to be your
Yeah.
first point of call before you even get to legal action. But where can people go if they have been affected by any of the situations we've talked about?
Yeah, so we do have a free legal helpline where people can call us and seek legal advice, 45, and you can visit our website, which is www.sleeblackwell.co.uk.
Well, Carly Sylvester, Chartered Legal Executive from Slee Blackwell Solicitor, thank you so much for all of your advice today. It's been insightful, even for me, who's been to quite a few places around the world. And I hope that it has helped you watching. If so, please like, comment, share this video with anyone you can, and let us know if you'd like us to address any other topic in a future episode of Do Yourself Justice.
Slee Blackwell Solicitors, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and looking after you.